Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Welcome to Game Over Montreal. I am Andrew Berkshire. I've got a great guest with me today, Sebastian High. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff, like the Montreal Canadiens just losing a game to the Colorado Avalanche, a game that they very much deserved to lose. But, Jake Allen, he did his thing. It's been a consistent thing this year that the Canadiens' goaltending has bailed them out time and time again. So we're going to talk about Artturi Lehkonen, because how could we not talk about Artturi Lehkonen? He scored on his former team tonight, played great, and we're also going to talk about some draft eligibles for this upcoming season, because, Canadiens fans, they're a little bit sad when the Canadiens lose, and they also seem to be a little bit upset when the Canadiens win, because you want to continue to get this tank going, right? But at least the Florida Panthers are there to keep losing and give the Canadiens yet another shot at a top-end pick. All right, let's get this show on the road. But before we do, you think you know the way it's going to go? Make your bet with Sports Interaction. Whether it's hockey, football, or basketball, Sports Interaction has you covered. Bet pregame, live in play, or on one of our many prop bets. Like that Cole Caulfield 50-goal bet. It's looking decent, He just keeps consistently finding ways to score. Almost did it tonight. And we're going to talk about Cole Caulfield, by the way, tonight, because there's lots to talk about. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all sports betting has to offer. You want to bet? Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. All right, I'm going to welcome my guest, Sebastian. How you doing, buddy? Oh, I've got myself set on the other camera, so let me just switch that in Zoom real quick so you guys can actually see Sebastian. There we go. That's fixed. You don't need double Andrew on the screen here. Nobody actually wants that. All right, first of all, Sebastian, happy holidays, because this is my last show before the break. A little bit of a minor announcement. I know Mark talked about it last show, but on Friday, I'm not going to be able to make it. Mark's not going to be able to make it, so our moderator, Robert, is going to step in and host his first show for Game Over. It's going to be really fun. Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. I was kind of split on the World Juniors this year because, all the stuff with Hockey Canada, right? And the board finally resigning kind of quieted everything down a little bit. And now there's a new temporary board in place. I think I'm going to watch the World Juniors. We decided as a company not to do Game Over Juniors this year. Just nobody was really comfortable with it. We're running 7 shows now on Game Over. So we're just going to let that be for this year. We'll probably go back to it next year. Obviously, we didn't do it over the summer. The summer was like an absolute no for us as the controversy was going on. But hopefully, we'll get it back. Oh, Sebastian's muted. Oh, my goodness. All right, we'll fix that right away. Let's figure that out. Every time, there's always something. But yes, I see Robert saying that Seb is muted. Seb is not muted now. So basically what Seb said is he said happy holidays. His semester's finishing soon. And fun times. All right. So destroyed my train of thought. But the World Juniors, obviously around the corner. I'm excited to watch it just because, Bedard, Wright on the same team. It's going to be crazy. The World Juniors that they were together for last year, we were kind of robbed of. I watched the gold medal game in the summer and saw Mason McTavish having perhaps the greatest moment ever in the World Juniors, but nobody really talks about it because I don't think anybody watched that tournament. But this one, no. I'm sure we'll have some eyes on it. But let's get into the game, Sebastian, because I feel like there's actually a fair amount to talk about in this one. And I wanted to start with Cole Caulfield because, we're going to talk about Anthony Richard, obviously. I feel like his goal was amazing. It's a really awesome story. But I was just looking through the data before we started the show. And I didn't think the top line had, that spectacular of a night. But I noticed, Caulfield looked dangerous. Doc was moving the puck pretty well. Suzuki, I think, has been a little bit off lately. But then I went and looked into it. And they were the only line that were above 50% in shot attempt differential. The line was above 70% in expected goals for percentage. And because the rest of the team was so bad, Caulfield specifically was plus 57% in expected goals for percentage relative to teammates, a number I have never seen ever, which, like, in raw numbers, he was about 74.6%, which means the team without him was below 30%. No, below 20%. That's bad,
Yep.
but good for
It's not
Caulfield.
good. Good for Caulfield, but not good for anyone else.
Like, I mean, yeah, pretty much. Like, uh, the whole game, watching the guys skate to the bench, and you hear all the time about Colorado having the high altitude and that being an issue. You could tell it was for the team. Like, they just were not. They didn't have it in the bag. Like, in the first period, that line had the puck and had the Avalanche stuck in their zone with I forget who. I think it was Alex Newhook lost his stick, and had them hemmed in, but they couldn't create any offense, and ended up doing a line change while they still had control because they just had nothing left. It made me think of the old Pierre Maguire saying the "sucking dirty pond water." It was kind of tough to watch tonight.
Yeah, but I think the player that caught my eye the most tonight was Kirby Doc. His transition game tonight was beautiful. Like the one zone entry where then a penalty was called, which was on like the earlier slash instead of the very obvious trip at the end of his entry. That was just I would show that to players as just like this is how you enter the zone on a solo rush, right? Like you delay, you get into the zone, you go around behind the net, protect the puck, use your physicality, low center of gravity. Every aspect of it was beautiful. And it's nice to see Kirby Doc getting those mechanics down because one of his biggest issues in Chicago last year was like he always kept his center of gravity very high and he was just constantly getting shoved off of pucks like he was weighing 110 pounds rather than 210. And he's getting those mechanics down and he's looking very, very good for the Habs this season. And that top line is so ineffective without him, which is really telling to like the necessity of having a high IQ player complementing Caulfield and Suzuki, because I still personally want to see Doc develop at center, but no one else on the team can come close to his impact on the top line.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue with the way that the Canadians are. I don't want to say built because it's not like Hughes and Gorton built this team. They just inherited a
Yeah.
bunch of really bad contracts and some good players to kind of build a ramshackle thing while they rebuild around it. But without like those three players, especially with Monahan and Gallagher injured, there's really just nobody that can play with them, right? Like we've seen Josh Anderson for a good stretch of games now.
Too many
He
games. Too
can't
many games.
handle that line. Like he just can't think on
No.
their level. We've seen Hoffman go up there, and like the underlying numbers are okay with Hoffman, but it seems like they get more concerned about having to cover for Hoffman and can't create as much offense with him there. So
Yeah.
it's
Like
just
honestly, I'd love to see the Habs try either Drouin or Slavkovsky on that top line because, well, with Slavkovsky, he just hasn't gotten a single shot there yet, and I think no one else on the team has earned a shot other than Doc. So like, why not just try Slav on the top line? And Drouin, I think, is the only other forward other than Doc and Slavkovsky that can actually think at the same pace as Caulfield and Suzuki. So why not give it a go, right? Also, he'd be playing on his off wing, which St. Louis likes a lot. So I feel like there are far worse options. Like I'd rather throw in Drouin than try Anderson for the 11th time. Like, why
yeah.
not?
Yeah, Kay in the chat says, "Hey, quick question: What the f was Armia doing there?" I'm assuming they're talking about the power play. I'm not sure, but hey, that's Yoel Armia who got an assist tonight. Okay, put some respect on his name.
Did he? He got. Oh, he
Yeah,
did.
on Anthony
Oh,
Richard's goal, he was the guy who
oh,
made the
beautiful.
breakout, and then
Yeah. What I
was it?
mean,
Who was it who
I
passed it up
think
to him? Jake Evans.
it was Jake Evans. But I mean, Armia, I think got like a couple shifts on that top line, right? In this game.
Yeah, I don't know what. I don't
Thing
know
is,
why.
he didn't look worse than Anderson did there, so there's that, I
Well, I
guess.
think weirdly, I think Armia is a smarter hockey player than Josh
Oh,
Anderson, but
oh,
he's
without a doubt. Like,
far less
yeah, for sure.
skilled. I mean,
Well,
skilled is
no,
not the right word. I feel like people,
he's more skilled than
yeah,
Anderson. He's smarter than Anderson,
but he can't think
but
as fast.
he's less consistent than Anderson, which is a problem because Anderson's already inconsistent.
Yeah,
Because like with Armia, it's that all the tools are there, right? Like I completely understand why he was a first round draft pick. Like he has everything that most scouts would love to see in a player, right? He has the soft hands, he has a wicked release, he has the physicality, like incredible puck protection skills. And he puts it together once every 20 games and that's it.
yeah, yeah. He like you watch him in practice, and he looks like Mario out there. And then in games, I feel like there's a disconnect between like the speed of his brain going to his hands versus like when you have time and space, right? And there's just
Yeah.
some players like that. A lot of them like career NHLers who score, or not NHLers, sorry, American Hockey League players who score like crazy amounts of goals in the AHL, and they get their cup of coffee in the NHL, and they can never really get over that hump. And part of that is just like manufacturing the speed from brain to hands, right, or brain to feet, and reacting to NHL speed. And it seems like that's been a consistent issue with Armia, and he is the player that he is. I feel like he's also been, cursed by some sort of devil this year. Like
Yeah.
I
It's
ran,
been a tough year even by his
it
standards.
has, and last year was much the same, right? I think he scored a
Yeah.
goal early last year, and then he went essentially the entire season without scoring until the
Doesn't he
very
have
end.
like 14 points since he signed that contract or something ridiculous like that? Like
Is it that
he
high?
has, I mean, it's like 14 points in like 78 games or something, but like
Oh,
it's
he had
rough.
14 points last year,
Oh, okay,
which
sorry.
is
So he's up to
shocking.
17 then. Okay,
S-
wow.
17 or 18 if they haven't counted his assist tonight yet. So
I thought he was at 2 points
no, no,
beforehand.
he's
So
got three. So I didn't know if
oh,
Hockey
okay, sorry,
DB had
sorry.
updated his assist yet. So he's got 17 points on that contract. Brutal.
Beautiful.
What I find sad
Yeah.
about Armia is like if you look at his production as a Montreal Canadian before this year, and you averaged out
So
playoffs and regular season, and you average it out per 82 games, people will not believe this. He is averaged as a Canadian 17 goals per 82 games. And you
yeah,
watch him now, and you'd never expect him to be able to score like
no.
that. But I
The
think
confidence is shot.
the
Like
confidence
his
is shot,
confidence is absolutely shot.
and he's one of those guys who, because he's a relatively intelligent player in terms of like puck protection and making the right play, that coaches have confidence moving him up the lineup. And I think he just needs to be on the fourth line. Like he is a luxury, amazing fourth liner on a contending team. And in every other role, there's like too much pressure on him to score, and he just can't do it.
But he also just hasn't been good on Montreal's fourth line this season. So
How much has
I,
he played on the fourth line? I know he was tonight, but
mainly, I think.
I feel like he's played a
I'm pretty
lot
sure he's.
with Dvorak, and he's played with Monahan.
I mean, there's been a lot of line shuffling this season, but I'm pretty sure he's played the most games on any line on the fourth.
Yeah,
He and Evans have been pretty much tied at the hip for the last like month and a bit. So
yeah. Noel
yeah,
said someone said last year they banked on the wrong Finn and Armia. I mean, I think anybody that went into like deep diving analytics would have told you that, right? But
but also you would not have been able to get a second in Justin Barron for Yoel
that's true.
Armia at the deadline.
That's true.
So
Well, I mean, you would have just lost him to
and the
free
Habs
agency, right?
and the Habs just didn't have the cap space like like to sign another like middle six winger. And I love Lehkonen. I think he is an incredible second line winger, but the Habs just don't have the cap space to sign a second line winger at $5 million a season. I know he's making 4.5 in Colorado, but he's taking a bit of a discount to stay in Colorado there.
Well, he might
But
have taken a
the Habs
discount to stay in Montreal too. I feel like he
maybe
liked it here. It's hard to speculate on
maybe,
that
but
stuff.
still like four and a half is what Mike Hoffman's making, right? Like
Yeah,
the Habs would have had to find salary somewhere, or it could have just meant that they wouldn't have been opened up to acquiring Sean Monahan in that first round pick. So if you look at it as trading Lehkonen away for Barron a second, Monahan in a first, right?
And whatever you get from
Because
Monahan. There's like a
and
trickle
yeah,
down effect,
exactly.
right? I mean, it's the
Yeah,
same
like
as like
cap space
Tyler
is just
Toffoli.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's
Cap space is just incredibly valuable in this league
it
right now.
is, especially for a rebuilding team, especially for a management group that's willing to weaponize it like they did with Monahan, right? And I think everyone loves Lehkonen at this point. After scoring the goal on Jean Baptiste Day to send the Canadiens to the Stanley Cup final, and then watching his success last year with Colorado, I feel like he's gone from a guy who was a little bit divisive in the fan base to just like almost universally loved. People recognize his value
Yeah.
now. He's played essentially first line minutes with the Colorado Avalanche ever since he was acquired. Uh, First or second line, been on their top power play unit and killing it. I believe he has like 13 power play points now this year after tonight scoring the power play goal. So great to arc of his career for Artturi Lehkonen after he was kind of pigeonholed in Montreal just because he was good defensively. But
And he's almost viewed at like Armia is now a couple years ago in Montreal as a player who had scored in the past, but who had absolutely no finish, had like two breakaways a game and missed net every single time, but had defensive value, which is kind of what Armia is now, except for the breakaways, right? But yeah, like it's so nice to see that Lehkonen has really returned to I guess what his potential was from the beginning, right? Like an 18 goal rookie season, everyone had high hopes. And then for a few years there, where he was exclusively used as a shutdown guy without any offensive opportunities, yeah, it's nice to see that his fortunes have changed for the best.
yeah, 100%. All right, Anthony Richard. I feel like we got to talk about him a little bit because obviously you always want to score your first goal as soon as possible in your NHL career. Uh, Richard had to wait until he was 26 years old. He turned 26 yesterday, but only his fourth NHL game and his second with the Canadiens, wearing the name Richard, having the balls to put 9 on his jersey while wearing
Oh,
Richard.
it's so good.
I
I
love
love
it.
it.
I love it. It's just, and I know he's not related to Henri or Maurice, but I do. I just love it. It's such an image to see a Richard playing for the Montreal Canadiens. And has there been a better first goal that you can remember outside of like? I feel like Brendan Gallagher's was really nice.
He had a
Uh,
nice one.
yeah,
Like
Caulfield
with
had a really
Gallagher.
nice one.
Oh, sorry. Caulfield's takes the cake, right? As the
Yeah,
OT winner.
but
Um,
it was just brilliant. Like the shoulder to get himself
he
space.
he he used all of his strength to all his strengths like really to their maximum on that play. I think that play really encapsulates what he can be at his best, which is an extremely speedy north-south player. He does lack that like lateral mobility and dynamic ability, but just blistering speed. And yeah, like he really used his body very well to shield the puck there, then cut across and fooled Georgiev. Like it was a very pretty first goal.
Yeah, it was great, and I do think he wore down as the game wore on a little bit. The whole team around him was terrible, so I wouldn't like call him out or anything. But early in the game, I feel like he was really the energy guy. He was bringing everything offensively. He was kind of the guy who was keeping things going for the Canadians. And over as the game wore on, I feel like his line kind of fell apart a little bit, but that's not really on him, right? He's the complimentary guy called up from the American Hockey League. But how do you see him? Because at 26 years old, you're not a prospect.
No.
Like obviously he is what he is, but he's scoring like mad with the Laval Rocket. Scores right away in his call up from Montreal. Could he be a guy that's like the next Matthew Darsh who just like takes advantage of an opportunity and carves himself out an NHL career this late in the game, or is this like just calm down? He's a guy who's probably going to go back into the AHL pretty quickly and score well there, but this is not something to be banking on.
I mean, personally, I'm higher on Richard than I am on a guy like Pizzetta. I think that Richard is limited. I don't think people can get their hopes up of him being like a top nine NHL player. I just think the tools are too limited there in terms of just high end hockey IQ and the playmaking upside and the dynamism and I guess just like there is no east-west movement in his game. It is entirely north-south, which works fine in the AHL, but limits you in the NHL. However, I think he could be a very, very, very effective fourth line checking forward on even a pretty good NHL team. Like he has the standout ability that any fourth liner needs in his speed, and he creates with it. He has a good shot. He knows how to get the goalie moving through across his crease. I think it's fully reasonable to hope that he can become a fourth liner on this team. But I mean, at the same time, you have a guy like Pitlick now in Laval, back in Laval to get Richard in, who I also think is a perfectly solid fourth line NHLer, right? Like fourth liners are just like there are so many players that are good enough to be on like a fourth line in the NHL, especially on a rebuilding team.
Hmm.
But Richard's story is just so compelling, and I know I first took notice. I was at like the intra squad game that the Habs had in training camp, and he scored like 2 or 3 goals in that game. I didn't care about the goals. It was just the speed. Like I was sitting pretty much at ice level, right like at center ice, and he was just zooming by. Like the speed is really, really incredible. And yeah, I'd love to see him stick with the Habs. Like it's a great story. Having just a Richard in the lineup at all is just wonderful, especially when he's wearing number 9 as part of his number. So I'd love to see him stick.
I just love the cojones to sit there and put
Oh, they're
9 on his
great.
jersey with the last name Richard. It's just to me that speaks to a guy who has so much confidence in himself that he's inviting that comparison, even though he's not related. You know how crazy the Montreal like the magnifying glass is. That's just awesome. The fact that he scored right away is fantastic. I wish it would have been at the Bell Center because I feel like the
That would
pop,
have been fun.
oh, the pop would have been incredible. It would have been incredible. Hear Michel Lacroix say his name, like, come on, would have been perfect. But they'll take what they can get. All right, Jake Allen. Obviously, there's not really that much to say, I think, anymore about the Canadians' goaltending, but we have to shout them out because how how can they keep doing this to him? Like he has to put up with so much, and I feel like the Canadians, what they lacked in stopping passes going through the middle of the ice tonight, they made up for in a lot of ways in shot blocking. But panic is the name of the game for their defensive structure right now.
Oh God,
And
yeah.
the goaltenders have had to be incredible, and Allen was tonight. But I guess also for everybody who's here and enjoying the stream, make sure you like and subscribe and all that jazz. But Sebastian, what did you think of Jake Allen?
He's stealing games. Both he and Montembeault have been stealing games all season. The Habs really shouldn't have one of like the 10 best goalie tandems in the league, but they somehow do so far. Um, I'd be very curious to see if teams just make overpayment offers for Jake Allen at the deadline. I don't think Montembeault is going to get quite the same attention in the NHL just because he doesn't have that track record.
Right.
Whereas Jake Allen has been part of a Stanley Cup winner, even though he didn't play in that playoff run, he was part of that team. And same thing in the Habs playoff run. The Habs wouldn't have made the playoffs if it weren't for Jake Allen that year. And he has that veteran presence. He's signed at a reasonable number for the next few years. I know he signed that wanting to stay in Montreal, but if a team comes in with an offer the Habs can't refuse, just because Jake Allen really has been stealing games for a bad team this season, that could be an interesting thing. But he's been incredible, and I really have a true appreciation for Jake Allen. I've loved him his entire tenure here. He's one of the funnest interviews on the entire team consistently. He's a likable veteran who is also just very, very, I guess, honest and realistic with his own valuation and his own like role on this team, and I really appreciate that. So part of me does want him to just stick around because I like having him on this roster, but the Habs might just get offers for him. And on this team, and with the direction they're going in, the more draft picks you can add or futures you can add, you kind of have to consider it.
Yeah, you do, and it's probably a little bit tougher to move a guy with 2 years left, but his contract's not that big, and you can always take
Especially for
back
goalies who
salary.
like
Yeah,
goalies age better than basically any other position, right? So as volatile as they are, Jake Allen has been consistently good for the Habs,
yeah,
and he has not declined with age just yet. So I could see a desperate team with an injury just taking a run at him, but yeah, who knows?
yeah. Or a team like Edmonton who needs somebody
Oh,
to be there for Skinner, and so far it hasn't been
uh,
Campbell, but they're
I
going to
feel
trade for
bad for
Edmondson
Campbell.
first.
Oh, or package deal. Why
Yeah,
not?
there you go. Josh
And
Holloway,
throw
their first round pick, and
Anderson,
Jesse
throw
Puljujarvi.
Anderson in as well. Just get all their prospects, all their picks.
All right, so mega deal with the Edmonton Oilers. It's Josh
Yeah,
Anderson, Jake Allen, and Joel Edmondson going to Edmonton for Jesse Puljujarvi, Holloway, and their first round pick. Does that seem fair?
I think you can get another first round pick in
Not
there.
two first round picks. All right,
Yeah.
done deal. Call Ken Holland, sign it up, run away, hang up the phone. It's done. Noel says the Oilers wish. Yeah, I mean, Jake Allen is such a stabilizing presence, right? And everyone's talking about his quote from the other night, the hot and horny
Oh, it's
thing, and
great.
it's so funny. And I feel like that's an underrated thing that we don't see a lot with Jake Allen. And I've heard a lot from people around the league is that he's like legitimately really funny in the locker room and guys really like him, which I think gives guys like something to play for as well, even in a season that's, doesn't have a lot of stakes. And Miss Epica in the chat says that Allen plays a lot better when the Canadians score first, and I think that's true as well. But I think that like we're also biasing the results there because when the Canadians don't score for first, it's usually because Allen's given up an early goal. Like that's just the way it goes. You can tell really early whether or not Allen is on or not. And tonight, very clearly, he was on. And I feel like, unfortunately, the Rantanen goal was not one of the top shots that he faced tonight in overtime. But you can't really fault
But
a
he
guy for letting the
he
two on a
he
one.
should have conceded like 4 goals in this game, so
Yes,
can't
easily.
really fault him.
Yeah, the Colorado Avalanche had some crazy, crazy chances, and I feel like as much as Allen was good, the defense blocked lots of shots. The Avalanche weren't like their finish was off a little bit to me. They were a little bit sloppy. They were very good at taking advantage of the Canadians' sloppiness and their bad puck management, but in terms of converting that into scoring plays, it felt like they were a little bit sloppy tonight compared to what we would expect. And maybe that comes down to missing some guys like they are. Some guy named Nathan McKinnon's out. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Who?
Yeah, never heard of him. No one
No idea.
important. No
Nah.
one like Sean Monahan or anything. No one important to the team. Although there's one a possible trade situation heading into the deadline.
McKinnon?
No, not McKinnon.
Okay.
No, that would
I
be
was like,
great.
eh,
Imagine. No.
let's just offer him David Savard, right? Like Savard and McKinnon 1-for-1, and we'll make the cap space work somehow, I'm sure. But
And this has gone totally off the rails. But I'm looking at the Colorado Avalanche and the loss of Nazem Kadri over the offseason. Like, is JT Compher who they want to go into the playoffs with as their second line center? I know he had to be their first line center tonight, but I don't know if he's even a second line center. Like, he's been a decent third liner for a long time, but they want to win another cup this year. I could see them looking at Sean Monahan and the exceptional season he's had so far. And as long as he can stay healthy, that could be an ad for them.
I could even see them going for a guy like Dvorak instead, or just trying to get one of the two out of Montreal because I think Dvorak would fit their style really nicely of just adding some of that grit for the playoff run. He has the face-off capabilities. He has the defensive consistency. But
Does he?
Monahan, I mean, I think he's a
Last year he
very good
sure
penalty
didn't.
killer.
He
He's a
is
very good penalty
he
killer.
is a good penalty killer.
At the very least, he has a penalty killing.
Yeah.
But obviously Monahan's a better fit in terms of just cap because they have to just retain half and then they're rid of the contract. But I'm very curious to see in what direction the Habs go between now and the deadline, because they could just shop their expiring contracts, but they could also shop guys like Anderson and Allen and Dvorak and try to just, I guess, sell as much as possible, because the 2023 draft is pretty stacked. And if they can get another first round pick or two, that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they can get another 2023 first round pick, they kind of have to do it, right? Like there's
Yeah.
not much that isn't nailed down that they wouldn't be willing to move for that. You've got to stack as much as you can right now, because this is the time where you have a bunch of players who are going to graduate into the NHL around the same time, and you actually build a contender around this really deep draft where they already have a lot of picks. But Kay says she has to check out. Oh no, Claire has to check out. So good night, Claire. Thanks for joining us on this slightly late night, delayed by overtime and a late start tonight. But trying to think of what else there is to talk about from this game. I feel like not a lot. The Canadiens weren't very good, right? But
Not really.
let's talk about the 2023 draft just shortly here, because obviously the Canadiens do
Florida
have
lost.
2 first round picks, right? And the Florida Panthers lost again, which is
Yes.
fantastic. It reminds me of that the meme with the 2 guys in the bus and one looking out the window and
Yeah.
seeing the rock and set. It's like when the Canadiens win and ruin the tank, and then it's like when the Florida Panthers lose and fix it again.
Yeah.
It's really funny how much that team has not been able to get it
Sucks.
together. And
They've been
like,
bad.
their
They've been rough
underlyings are
this
actually
season.
fine.
No,
Okay.
I know they are. Their finishing has been through the floor. They just
Oh yeah.
cannot score if their life depended on it. And they've been losing leads consistently. They
And
were up on New Jersey today and they blew it.
who would have guessed that the incredibly unreliable season to season goaltending that they relied on last year would not be the same this year? Like,
And who would have thought that Paul Maurice would not actually improve the team?
funny
I
how
don't
you
know.
mention the all-time losingest coach in NHL history, who consistently has had terrible goaltenders his whole career, except for Connor Hellebuck. And Sergei Bobrovsky, you look at his career, right? And it's almost every season after season. It's like great season, terrible season, great season, terrible season. It switches constantly. And Sergei Bobrovsky, great season last year, not so good this year. Predictable, right? And then Spencer Knight, young goaltender, not ready to take the reins. Predictable. So this whole situation with the Florida Panthers is giving the Canadiens most likely at least another mid first round pick. Who are some guys that you have your eye on, Sebastian, in that middle of the first round for 2023?
I mean, it's tough to say at this point, just because I'm at this point really waiting for Bob McKenzie's midterm rankings to kind of just get a better sense of where NHL teams think guys are going to go. Because I have a guy ranked 4th overall that I think could very realistically be available at 16th,
Oh wow.
and that is Andrew Cristall. Andrew Cristall is like, if it weren't for Connor Bedard, he would be like the biggest focus in the WHL in terms of point production. He's sitting at, I believe, right around 1.8 points a game on a Kelowna Rockets team that is bad. They are under 500 on the season. He is leading their team in points by like 15 or 20 points. He is just dominant on that team. And for some reason, many lists that are like actually consulting with NHL teams have him like the back of the end of the first, or even like he wasn't even an A-grade prospect until a month ago, which is just absurd to me. I released my first actual ranking today, which is only a top 20, because I've been like it's been really tough to kind of split hairs in like the late end of the first for me. But I was really considering putting Cristall above Mitch Cobb at 3. Like I really, really love Cristall. He's the best playmaker in the entire draft class. Tremendously skilled, super deceptive, incredibly dynamic. He's not the quickest necessarily, and he is undersized, but he's not tiny or weak. He uses his size quite effectively to leverage opponents off the puck and to win board battles. He's really inside driven. He initiates contact quite consistently. The big thing with him is that there is like next to no defensive work rate at this point in his career, and that is like legitimately my biggest worry with him. But the offensive skill is just so high end. I would swing on him at fourth overall, fifth overall, sixth overall. So if he's available for some odd reason in the 16 range with the Florida pick, and the Habs get a player with very legitimate first line upside as a winger for Ben Sherratt, I'd be very happy. I would really like that personally. So he's definitely one that I have my eye on.
Yeah, the way that you described him sounds like a poor man's Nick Suzuki, basically a Nick Suzuki without defense.
I would say he's more of again, it's not a perfect comparable, but like a
No, there
few
are no
people
perfect
have said it,
comparables.
but more along the lines of a Mitch Marner. That's more the comparable I would make. Um, and I wouldn't really have many detractors to take to like reduce his value compared to Mitch Marner in his own draft year. I mean,
Wow.
Marner went fourth overall in 2015, which was the last draft that was comparably good to 2023. And I have Crystal at four, so I can totally see those comparables of just like genuine elite game breaking skill and playmaking ability. He also has a very good shot, and he finds open space very well. Like he's a tremendous player. If we're talking poor man's Nick Suzuki, there we could go a bit further down the draft. There are two OHL centers that I could kind of like put more in that kind of range. Luca Pinelli, who plays for Ottawa, and Callum Ritchie, who plays for Oshawa. Both of those guys are really smart 200-foot centers, whose skating is not necessarily the biggest strength. So there you kind of have that Nick Suzuki mold. And I have those two ranked back to back. I believe at like 14 and 15, or no, actually I have Pinelli at 14, Braden Yeager at 15, and Callum Ritchie at 16. But Braden Yeager I think is also kind of comparable in there, but his defensive game has dropped off so far this year. Last year he was looking like a really good defensive center, and this year that just has not been there.
Interesting that usually you don't see a drop off like that unless a player
No,
is traded to a different team or taking on like a way bigger role, something like that. But
and he has the exact same role as last season. He was playing first line center last year as well. So
so
that
random.
yeah, so Jaeger was in a lot of like top five rankings going into the season, and he still isn't a few that I'm seeing. But for me, I wouldn't consider him in the top 10 really.
Yeah, Aaron Idovich is in the chat saying if the Habs get Cristal, we might get a Hudson level reaction video. I mean, everybody loves
Yep.
Lane Hudson right now. I've seen some wild takes recently. I think people are just traumatized by watching the Canadians power play and they want him to go pro next year.
I mean,
It's not
look,
happening.
I ranked Lane Hudson 11th overall in the draft last year. Which I believe is higher than any other public scout had him. Even I'm saying like give him one more season in the NCAA. Like just don't rush him. Like be careful. Don't make the mistakes that the organization has made so many times before. Just give him time to marinate for one season on top of this one. But yeah, like what Aaron is referencing there is because I was live streaming the draft, and when the Habs picked Hudson, I kind of freaked out. And if the Habs got Cristal, I'd also kind of freak out. So yeah, he's definitely correct.
Yeah. All right. Let's cut it there because I'm tired and it's a late game and I've got to get up when the kids get up tomorrow morning.
Fun
Sorry.
stuff.
But before we close it out, Trizak says that Anderson is to NHL GMs like the bad boy is to girls. They both look at him and say, I can fix him. Every team wants Anderson. I have to say, you're probably not wrong. But watching this game, all I could think watching Nikushkin was, Nikushkin is who teams think Anderson is. And
Mhm.
so many
But
teams
Anderson just
passed on
isn't
him.
Nichushkin.
No,
Just isn't
no.
Nichushkin.
And he can't be.
Sadly,
He
no.
doesn't have he
He
doesn't have
he
it.
la- he lacks the dynamic ability. He lacks the hockey IQ, and he lacks the hands. Like
Yeah.
there's way too much missing there.
Yeah. Yeah. He can drive the net. He can do that part, but he
He
can't get the
can,
shot
yeah.
off.
No,
All right.
or play consistently.
Or play consistently. But, someone trade for him. Someone trade a lot
Please
for him. It'll be great. I swear it'll
give us
work
two
out.
first round picks, please.
You can fix him. You can do it. the Canadiens, they're not good enough to fix Josh Anderson, but you, team, it's a contender.
Our coaching is not progressive enough to fix Josh Anderson.
Exactly. You can figure it out. You, contending team. You can put him with the guy who's going to change everything for him. He's going to score 35 goals. It'll be perfect. Robert says, I can fix him. All right, to the Leafs then. Josh Anderson to the Leafs. That's what we're doing for the entire Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds.
Give us Nylander.
Just Nylander. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Thanks for joining me, Sebastian. Before we close it out, Sebastian, can you tell everybody where to find your work?
Mainly just on Twitter. It's High_Sebastian on Twitter. I will be releasing my full top 32 rankings for the draft right around New Year's. So I'm excited for that, and expect lots of World Junior updates. I'll also get back into the habit of making some more of the video analysis threads that I was doing over the summer, which were all quite popular. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to write me a message. But yeah, basically just Twitter is where I centralize all of my work.
Yeah, and those threads were fantastic. If we could just get like every couple days a Lane Hudson thread, I feel like everybody would be very happy.
That would make my mental health so much better just by watching more Lane Hudson. Like, I'd be so happy.
It's just the same thread, but you can just release it every couple days. Just like a little shot of endorphins there. It'd be fantastic. All right, everybody. Happy holidays. Have a good one. Enjoy time with your families. Be very, very nice to Robert when he hosts on Friday. You owe it to him. He's fantastic. Best mod in the world. And I will see you next Wednesday when I'm back from holidays, and hopefully this team will give us more positives to talk about there. I don't care if they win or lose, but I'd like to see them play a little bit more like they did against the Lightning, because, I know they lost that game, but they lost it more on bad luck at even strength and bad special teams than bad play. Even strength, they played great. Tonight, not so much. Arizona, not so much. And that Ducks game, let's not talk about it. All right, we'll see you next Wednesday. Talk to you later.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.